Hello, everyone. This is Rogers Harrison. Welcome to another episode of the Sports Deep Dive Podcast. The Sports Deep Dive Podcast takes a look at the world of sports, mostly in the past, as we look at trends and leagues and teams and cities and that type of stuff. So today, we're going to take a deep dive into professional sports teams that are named after birds. And we're going to look at the Major League Baseball, the National Basketball Association, the National Football League, and the National Hockey League, and take a look at those. So among those examples, we've got the St. Louis Cardinals, the Baltimore Orioles, Toronto Blue Jays of Major League Baseball. We've got the Atlanta Hawks and the New Orleans Pelicans of the NBA. We've got the Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons, Baltimore Ravens, Philadelphia Eagles, and Seattle Seahawks of the National Football League. And we're also going to take a look at the Anaheim Ducks and the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL. So let's take a look at the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, most of these are quite simple as to why they named their franchise after birds. For instance, the St. Louis Cardinals are named for the scarlet cardinal, which is a bird associated with the state of Missouri. So the state of Missouri, it's not the state bird, I don't think, but the cardinal is associated with the state of Missouri. The Orioles were named after the Baltimore Oriole, the state bird of Maryland. And the Blue Jays were named after the blue jay, a common bird in Canada. So really very little explanation for those. They're just named after their area. Let's take a look at the National Basketball Association. Let's take a look at the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Atlanta Hawks did not start out as the Atlanta Hawk. They started out as the Tri-City Blackhawks. Now, the Tri-City Blackhawks were in the Milwaukee area and also Illinois area. I know those are different states, but it started up mostly Illinois before moving to St. Louis, becoming the St. Louis Hawks and then the Atlanta Hawks. But the Tri-City Blackhawks, you could say, well, is Blackhawks a bird, or is it like a Native American like the Chicago hockey team, the Chicago Blackhawks? So that's something to figure out. So whether the Atlanta Hawks started as more of a nod of Native Americans or a nod to birds. But anyway, so the Hawks currently are considered to be named after the American goshawk, which is a North American bird, which ironic, I don't know if this is ironic or not, but is sometimes confused with a falcon. The goshawk is sometimes confused with a falcon, and that's the name of Atlanta's National Football League team, the Atlanta Falcons, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But I just find that interesting, that the goshawk, which is what the Atlanta Hawks say that they are modeled after, is sometimes considered mistaken for the Atlanta Falcon. I'm sorry, for a falcon. New Orleans Pelicans. Now, the New Orleans Pelicans, before they had that name in the NBA, they were a minor league baseball team. Minor league baseball team in the early 20th century had the name of the New Orleans Pelicans. And so the NBA team just adopted that name. And they are named after the brown pelican, which is the state bird of Louisiana. All right, so here we go. Tricky. That's Major League Baseball. And then that's to take a look at the National Basketball Association teams. But let's get to the National Football League. And here's something that's very interesting. The Arizona Cardinals actually are not named after the bird. I know that their logo currently is of a bird, the little profile there, but they weren't originally named after a bird. They adopted that name because they played in maroon jerseys that they purchased from the University of Chicago. So if you remember, the Arizona Cardinals, and you may have heard this in a previous podcast here on Sports Deep Dive, this started in Illinois, Chicago Cardinals, and then they obviously got their jerseys from the University of Chicago, which were maroon because those are the colors of UFC, and then that's why they were called the Cardinals, not because of an actual bird. And I found that interesting. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons, in August of 1965, a contest was held which resulted in the nickname of them being called the Falcons. Now, several people suggested the Falcons, and I wanted to go ahead and tell you the other names that the people had to choose from in the team contest for the Atlanta Falcons, which became the Atlanta Falcons. Lancers, Thrashers, Vibrants, Firebirds, Confederates, Rebels, Knights, Crackers, and then the Falcons. All right, so a couple of those. Crackers was the name of their minor league baseball team, the Atlanta Crackers. Thrashers was the state bird of Georgia, the brown thrasher, and would wind up being the name of the hockey team that debuted in '99 that has since moved on to become the Winnipeg Jets. So that's what they had to choose from, and a lot of people chose the name the Falcon. However, the person that the Falcons credit as winning the contest was a school teacher from Griffin, Georgia, Julia Elliott. And she was selected as the winner because this was her reasoning for the new name. The Falcon is proud and dignified, with great courage and fight. Never drops its prey. It is deadly and has a great sporting tradition. And that quote is from the Atlanta Falcons website. I'm going to say it again. The Falcon is proud and dignified, with great courage and fight. It never drops its prey. It is deadly and has a great sporting tradition. So that's a little insight into the Atlanta Falcons. Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens were named after the raven, which was the subject in an Edgar Allan Poe poem called The Raven. And Edgar Allan Poe is from Baltimore. And so that's in order to honor him, they called their team the Ravens. All right, we're going to take a look at the Seattle Seahawks now. Were named after the Seahawk with his Seahawk is what they were called, which is another name for an osprey, which is a fish-eating hawk. And Seattle, being up there near the ocean, thought that was a fitting name for them. Seahawk, another name for osprey, a fish-eating hawk. Let's take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the first Philadelphia NFL entrant was called the Frankford Yellow Jackets. Frankford is a suburb of Philadelphia, northeast Philadelphia. And they hosted the city's pro team from 1924 to 1931. In the middle of the 31 season, 1931, the Yellow Jackets went bankrupt and had to cease operations. So a few years later, the Burt Bell and Lou Ray formed a syndicate and purchased the rights to own Philly's NFL team for $2,500. Now, Burt Bell, who played football at the University of Pennsylvania, wanted to give his team a nickname that represented the city of Philadelphia. Now, he didn't have one in mind, but he wanted something that says Philadelphia. I mean, he could have gone with liberty, he could have gone with freedom or anything like that. But he didn't want to do that. And so he was thinking about it one day. And one day, he was walking down the street in Philadelphia and noticed a billboard showcasing the National Recovery Act eagle. So it was for the National Recovery Act, and they had an eagle on it. And then that's where the name came from. He saw the billboard, says, I'm going to name my team the Eagles. And so they've had that name ever since, except during World War II when the Eagles and the Steelers combined and played under the name Steagles, a combination of the two franchises, the Steagles. The National Hockey League, let's take a look at the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks got their name actually from the Disney movie, the Mighty Ducks, about a youth hockey team. And when Anaheim was an expansion team for hockey, they decided to reference that movie because, Anaheim is not far from Disneyland. And I believe Disney might have owned the team at the time, the first Anaheim team. Pittsburgh Penguins are named after the penguin, which is a bird that is associated with ice and snow. So there you go, Pittsburgh Penguins. So those are some of the bird nicknames in professional sports. And I wanted to share those with you. Not a very short episode of the Sports Deep Dive podcast for you this week. These podcasts are all commercial free, and we hope that you can listen to it on your commute way to work, or maybe on your commute from work to home. That way you can either get on or end your day appropriately. Feel free to leave comments and let us know what you think about the Sports Deep Dive podcast. And until next time, this is Rogers Harrison saying so long, everyone.